Hello, hello. Hope you're all enjoying your Sunday. I think for most of you, it will probably be Sunday evening, especially if you're tuning in from Europe. Here it's Sunday afternoon in Toronto. And if you happen to be tuning in on the other side of the world in Australia, a very early good morning to you. I'm pretty sure it's kind of early at that time, if anyone is tuning in from Australia. But to start off, if you are tuning in, let me know where you're tuning in from. Say hello. Don't be shy. Yeah, so every now and then I decide to do these live chats just to kind of break the flow of things. When I'm making my videos, I tend to be very, I don't know, I tend to have this broadcast voice thing going on. And while it definitely is me, it's not all of who I am, and it's a bit exaggerated. So this is an opportunity to talk to some of you directly. Please let me know if you have any questions concerning this year's Eurovision, anything that's on your mind. There might be certain topics that I might not go into too much detail about, but I will do my best to answer every question. So, I mean, as far as what we're looking at right now, we have all the songs that will be competing this year. Not too much has shifted towards the end of the announcements of songs when we're talking about the winners. We didn't really see too many songs emerge in later points and suddenly become in contention to win. I think the only one that came close, which really wasn't that late in the process, was Switzerland, which is one that we haven't talked about at all yet on this channel. And that's definitely one that I'm really excited about. So again, let me know where you're tuning in from. Let me know what songs you're really liking, which ones you're really excited about. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Hello to Vincent. Nice to see you again. Howdy. And hello to Oliver. CP. Okay, it's only showing up on my screen as the code for the flag rather than the actual flag itself. So please tell me which flag that is. Hello to Girlboss ESC. Thank you very much. Hello to Czechia. I'd love to know what you have to say about Czechia's song this year, because that's one that I see a lot of. It's not the most widely appreciated song, but I do see a kind of dedicated group that really like it. I know that for one of my friends, it's their absolute favorite, and they have high hopes for it. France, really? CP? That's a surprise to me. I don't know how that how that. I don't know what the connection is there. But in any case, nice to see you. And yes, please tell me what you think about Czechia's song. Hello to Makinder, tuning in from Leicester, UK this evening. Nice to see you. And hello to José C from Portugal. Hola. So yeah, let me know what's on your minds. What are the songs that you're most excited about? What are the ones that you are kind of undecided about? I'd love to know what you have to say. Before tuning in today, there are some songs that I really only listened to once and then didn't ever find a reason to revisit them at least. And among them, one of them was Georgia's song, which, like, when it comes to Georgia, we all know that they haven't been in the final for a long time. The last time that they were there was 2016. And the song that they've gone with this year, it's certainly more, kind of like typical of Eurovision. It's, the powerful female up-tempo song. And I have to say that, like, on a first listen, it didn't leave much of an impact, but I did enjoy it. And now it's of the songs that I listened to earlier today, it's the one that I'm thinking about most. I kind of go back to that melody often. It's that one and Greece's song, which is definitely a very bold entry. And I'd be very curious to know which one, what you think about those songs. Hello to Barcelona, Marian. I used to live in Barcelona. I had a great view from my apartment. It was looking right out to the Sagrada Familia, and so I got to see it be built during the year that I spent there, and it was really nice. Makinder's asking, what is your favorite ballad song from this year? So, oh, it's Portugal. Yeah. At first I was like, I'm gonna have to jog my memory as to what the ballads are, but yeah, I have a soft spot for Portuguese songs. I really like how the delegation goes about doing the selection, and then also just how they approach Eurovision. They're not so concerned about winning. They're more interested in just kind of letting the artist be comfortable and doing their best. And specific to Yolanda and Gritu, it's just like everything I could ask for from a ballad, as far as like very well performed, very elegantly staged, and it's not like, because with ballads there is a kind of balancing act that you have to achieve when it comes to staging, because it's very easy to do too little, and it's also almost as easy to do too much. And in this case, with the choreography that they have, I think it's a great starting point. It definitely needs a little bit more, as far as like maybe just like moments where they give it like a splash of color. And because they're all dressed in white, it's very easy to do that. Just like I was thinking, like when you get the percussion. Oh no, it's not percussion. It's like a bass synth that comes in at the second verse, and like the sound changes up pretty dramatically. So I think that would be a great moment to just kind of do a splash of like red or white just while that sound is being introduced, and then you can go back to the white and blue. But in any case, yeah, that's my favorite ballad. There are some other good ones. Like I'm a fan of Belgium's. What else? France, of course, is one that a lot of people have talked about. It's the very first song that we got. So yeah, I think for ballads, this is a pretty good year. What else has been asked? Vincent is saying, my favorite this year is France. Slimane is just an amazing performer, and I hope he does well. I'm pretty sure that he will. I have very little reason to believe that he won't. Of course, we won't know that until rehearsals. Oliver saying, I'm waiting for the live performances before I choose my favorites. I like the Polish song, but the live I heard was not good. Was that at a pre-party? Because I believe she was at the Mellow Weekends, which is like really the only like substantial pre-party that we've had so far. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of reluctant to go off of the pre-party performances if that's the one that you were talking about, because they're not really like they're barely concerts, and I don't mean that as a slight to them. It's just more so about the intention of what they're trying to do there, because every artist comes up and most of the time they just perform the one song. It's just to the track. There are very rarely live instruments and all that. So yeah, but in any case, I understand where you're coming from. Marianne is saying the best ballads are Portugal and Serbia. Yeah, I'm also a fan of Serbia's. I think it's. I said this in an earlier video. I think it might be a little too subtle when we're talking about success at Eurovision, but I do think that it's really nice, and the meaning behind it. For those who don't know, the Ramonda is a type of flower that is rare, and it can survive off of very little water, and so it's used as an allegory. An analogy for the like perseverance of Serbian soldiers while they were on their way back from a significant moment in World War One. But yeah, it's very cool. Girlboss saying about our song, I was a huge fan of it from the beginning. I wasn't so sure about its chances to do well at ESC. Thankfully, the revamp made me hopeful again. The song is much more powerful now. Yeah, I had a moment to listen to the revamp, and I think that they've they've kind of maximized. They've made full use of the 3 minutes by giving it that bridge in the middle. And yeah, because we're not really taking into consideration too much that performance from ESCZ, it could be really really elevated. And Czechia is one of those countries that tends to impress when it comes to the staging, and live performances are usually pretty good as well. Mackinder's favorite ballad is also Serbia's. Hovstachek. I always have trouble saying your name, so I apologize. Do you think a compromise winner, someone who wins neither vote, is likely this year? Certainly. Especially because, once again, we're looking. I mean, I say this as sort of like because this has happened in the past. Sorry, 1 second. Cusquinha. Calma, Cusquinha. Tudo bem. She can get a little noisy sometimes. But yeah, so this doesn't really apply to the last 2 years, because the last 2 years, the winner was expected from an early point. But before that, and the year before that, like 2020, 2021, it felt wide open. And this is definitely one of those years where the winner isn't obvious. And like, also with last year, like most people were expecting Sweden, but there was also Finland there. Finland was obviously the biggest threat to that. So we don't really have that this year. And for that reason, that could actually manifest in the voting as well, where we don't see the entries. We don't see like one or two entries pulling in all the 12 points, and they could be more spread out. And in my opinion, that makes Eurovision better, because I know that if we end up in that situation, whatever song came first with the televote that doesn't win, people are going to be mad about, and we're going to be right back to where we were last year about stupid juries, blah blah blah. I really think that it's what makes Eurovision interesting, and that I don't agree with this idea that like the juries have to be voting exactly as the televote do. But anyway, that could be a very long conversation. Hello to Thomas. My favorite ballad this year is Portugal, and it's your winner. Yeah, it's a very elegant song, really beautifully performed. I'm seeing a lot of love for it from people who are not specifically Portuguese, because I know that the Portuguese public can be very passionate about their own entries, but for good reason, because they're often high quality in my opinion. Hello from Austria. Excited to find out if Croatia will live up to the odds and hear some live vocals for the first time during pre-parties. Yeah, and Croatia has a pretty substantial lead if we're looking at the odds right now. I apologize if you hear some wrestling with with a dog toy in the background. But yes, currently they have a substantial lead in the odds. People are really excited about it, and if Croatia does win, it would be their first win as an independent country. Yeah, I mean, it is really a big question about how it's going to come together at Eurovision, because while the Dora performance is definitely passable as a Eurovision performance, I think that in order for it to be as best as it can be, it would need to be a bit tighter, because one thing that kind of frustrates me about that performance is that you have all these different elements that are kind of in isolation. You have him performing the song, you have the dancers, kind of telling the story of it, and then you have I think it was just a drummer and a keyboardist or some sort of instrumentalist that were in the background. And right now it's like three separate things that are happening that are not blending together. And I think that the key is going to be blending it or simplifying it in a way that is just more consistent with telling the story of the song. But yes, Girl Boss saying, I actually feel quite hopeful that we are going to qualify, even if the bookmakers disagree. Well, at this point, I don't think we have, because we have the odds for the win, which it's always important to stress that like the rank in the odds to win does not necessarily correspond to where people think that song is going to finish. It's just about the likelihood to win. And it might seem strange to think that those would be two different ideas, but they are. And eventually we'll get a separate set of odds that are just for qualifiers, for the top three, for non-qualifiers as well. There's really like they have every possible outcome you can bet on. So yeah, I think that they're not necessarily as likely to qualify this year as in other years, because a lot of people were pretty confident about them last year. But yeah, there's still more to be said. Hello to Giuseppe. Do you think the semifinals are balanced? I think I was talking about this with a friend the other day. I think that the heavy hitters are still mostly in semifinal one, and I think, well, I should probably look at them again, because just give me 1 second. I've got EurovisionWorld.com open over here. Most of you probably use them for your own purposes. They do a great job at organizing all the information. So just give me a moment here to find, where is the semifinals? Semi one. Okay. So yeah, in semi one, we're looking at Croatia, Cyprus, Ireland, Lithuania, Poland, Serbia, Ukraine, Australia, Azerbaijan, Finland, Iceland, Luxembourg, Moldova, Portugal, and Slovenia. And then semifinal two, we're looking at Albania, Armenia, Austria, Czechia, Denmark, Greece, Malta, Switzerland, Belgium, Estonia, Georgia, Israel, Latvia, Netherlands, Norway, and San Marino. So I think that there are more contenders to win in the first semifinal, but the song that I feel is most likely to win personally at this point is in the second semifinal, which is Switzerland, or Italy, who is obviously a Big Five country. I think, yeah, I think that in semi one, it's like slightly, it's slightly more competitive, but it's a lot more balanced than it was last year. And I think even the year before, I think it's kind of more similar to how it was in 2022, because in 2022 we had Ukraine in semi one and a lot of other songs that finished in the top 10. And then I think that in semi two, it was just Sweden and Serbia that finished in the top 5. And then maybe there was another, sorry, yeah, they finished in the top 5. And then I think there might have been one other song that finished in the top 10 from semi two, but it was mostly semi one and Big Five countries. And there were a lot of Big Five countries in the top 10 that year. Yeah, it was Spain, UK, Italy. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, to answer your question, they're slightly unbalanced, but not terribly unbalanced. Hello to Taya D. Hi from Serbia. All ballads are wonderful this year. My favorite is Belgium. That Dolly saying the problem with Grito is that probably will struggle to qualify, but if it qualifies in the final, jury will push them to the top like Bridges. And this is exactly what I think. So I have a script written for a video that I will record about Grito so that it gets its own dedicated video. There will be other songs that will be treated that way as well. And this is exactly what my thinking was, because like as a ballad, it's very elegantly performed. It has all of the kind of things on paper for what the juries would really appreciate, and for good reason. But yes, it's possible that because they can't depend on jury support in the semifinal, that maybe it would come 11th. Because in the case of Bridges, Estonia from last year, it finished 10th as a qualifier, so it still made it in, and there was still a substantial gap between 10th and 11th. But yeah, I mean, in any other year when we were talking about 50-50 jury televote qualifiers, there would be no question in our mind that Estonia would go through, and it probably would have finished in like 3rd, 4th or so, because of how much jury support that it eventually had in the grand final. So yes, I take your point. I think it's a good point to make, but I'm optimistic. I'm glad that you picked up on that you've validated my description of the song, because sometimes I read things that are other people's interpretations, and it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me, but then because I don't have that cultural understanding, it doesn't always apply. So I'm glad that you validated me about that. Vincent's asking, will you be going to Malmö this year? Yes, I will, and I'm really looking forward to it, because I've never been to Sweden, and this is going to be the first time, the first new country that I'll be visiting in 6 years, because I've been, obviously I was in the UK last year, but I've been to the UK many times, and then the year before that I was in tour in Italy, and it had been a while since I was in Italy last, but that wasn't it wasn't a first time for me to experience that country. And this time I'll be going to Sweden and Denmark. I've thought about fitting in a 3rd country in there, but I don't know if it's going to happen. I think maybe I'll just kind of spend my time in between the 2 countries, and I'm looking forward to that. Fabio, obrigado. I have to admit, it's not that I'm just like a Portuguese fanatic or anything. I'm in a relationship with a Brazilian, so it's been a reason for me to learn Portuguese, to be able to communicate with his with his mother, minha sogra. And yeah, I really like Portuguese as a language. It has its challenges, and I also kind of depend a lot on my knowledge of Spanish, which I do speak, at a conversational level. But anyway, thank you very much for your compliments. Oliver saying, we have many songs in national languages this year. I don't know if there are more than last year, but I like this trend. I think it is actually more than last year. Last I checked, it was like roughly 40%. And like a lot of it's one of the things that fans talk about a lot, having songs in national languages, and I know that people really appreciate that, and I do think that it helps make the show just feel a little bit more like an international experience. I'm not of the opinion that songs are better if they're in the national language, or if they're in like a like a sub-national language, something like we saw in 2022 the French entry was in Breton, Breton, Breton. Anyway, it was it was not in French. Um, but yeah, because I know that there's some people like if let's say that Sweden releases its entry and they're like, oh Sweden, why don't you send a song in Swedish? Like I don't think that the song would the song itself would necessarily be better if it was in Swedish, and I think that um, artists should have the freedom to sing in the language that they feel most comfortable with. And I remember a few years back, I interviewed Neve, who was participating in Festival de Canção, and we were talking about how the fact that his song was in English and that he was getting a lot of fan support. And it would have been the first entry to represent Portugal completely in English. Instead, it went to the Black Mamba and Love Is on My Side, which was also completely in English, and also the first time that Portugal had done that. And he was saying that for him, he really likes to sing in whatever language feels best to communicate the message of the song, because most of his music is in Portuguese, but he has a few songs. Sorry, most of his songs are in English, and some of his others are in Portuguese. And yeah, it's nice to have the freedom, I think, especially if you are fluent in both languages. And I guess like the downside of when people feel like obligated to sing in English is that sometimes they're overestimating their English abilities, which is, it's not the best for like a professional impression. But anyway, sorry, I went down a bit of a tangent with that. But Girl Boss, we should wait for the semi-odds to judge that. Really needs some elevation to get the public votes. I'm not sure which. Maybe we were talking about Portugal there. Hofstadschak is asking what would you consider to be the likeliest jury winners? That's a good question. I know a lot of people are looking at France, and I think that France is definitely one of them, one of the biggest, one of the most likely contenders for the jury win. I think it could be Italy. I think, especially if like, because everybody tends to think that like the juries only go for ballads and pop songs, and I mean this is like a it's a pop song, but it has that Mediterranean flavor to it. Possibly Switzerland as well, and I think that one of the biggest things that Switzerland has going for it is the fact that Nemo is singing in so many different styles, and the way that they like are expressing the middle ground between the gender binary, and doing that by rapping and singing in high falsettos. Like, when do we ever see that? When have we ever seen the same performer rap and then switch to like a more like operatic style, So that, I think, is, if they are able to pull it off really well, then I think it will be very impressive. And I'm trying to think of others that would be jury win contenders. I don't think it will be Sweden this year. I don't think that it has enough going for it, but I think that they will certainly pull in jury points for the energy, for their presence, and yeah, I'm expecting a good jury score for them. But yeah, just taking a quick look here. I would love it if it was Norway, but I do think that what we're seeing is that not everybody really understands the style of singing that I think her name is Gildens. Anyway, I'm not gonna do my best not to get it wrong. But the lead singer of Gotte has she. I think I heard her say like she puts little pearls on the notes. She had a very like unique way of describing the way that she sings, and it's so effective for what they're going for. But maybe it's not traditional singing technique, and it would be a real shame if they get blanked by the jury for that. But the performance is still very impressive, and I think that there's definitely a lot to admire about it. Hello to Benedict. Do you have any wishes for the semifinal running orders? Let me look at the semifinals again. Yeah, I don't really have too many specific ones. I really hope they don't give the closing spot to Finland again. Like, it was definitely justified last year. I could see them going for it again this year, but I feel like there are better options for closer. I think. Well, maybe not. Now that I'm looking at the second half, I mean, it could be Australia. Australia also got it last year with a very different song. Um, maybe Iceland. Maybe. Uh, yeah, it could be Finland. And then as far as like the opener goes, I have a feeling they're going to go for like Lithuania or Poland because it seems way too early to put Croatia there, and everything else. Maybe Cyprus. Cyprus might be a good opener for that, especially if like because Cyprus. This is like what Cyprus does best. They do the up tempo girl bop songs. Yeah, I think that would probably be the most likely opener. And then for semifinal two, let's see. So in the first half, we're looking at Albania, Armenia, Austria, Czechia, Denmark, Greece, Malta, Switzerland. I think Malta, kind of for the same reasons, the same reasons as who were we talking about before? Cyprus. That could be a good opener. Maybe Czechia, and then a closer in the second half. Estonia would be a good option. Maybe Georgia as well. Um, yeah, I also have the same kind of reservations about the Netherlands closing, although I could see them going for it. There are a lot of good options for closers in the second half. But yeah, as far as like anything more specific than that, I haven't given it too much attention. So yeah, I don't have much else to say about that. The Big Five will perform in the semis. Do you think that will have an influence on the televote? It's really hard to say, and I am curious about what the motivation was behind doing that. I'm not opposed to it, and one thing that I was talking about with my partner was before this announcement came out. There's some people, not enough people in my opinion, but some people have been trying to call attention to the fatigue that the artists face sometimes. Especially if, for example, if you're in the second semifinal and you qualify, you go right from having a very late night after the press conference, and then maybe even a pre-party if like your delegation expects it, or an after party rather, and you go right from that into rehearsing for the grand final, and yeah, you just don't really have a lot of rest. So one kind of advantage that the Big Five had about that was because they didn't perform in the live show, they didn't have to worry about that fatigue, and now they do. So it could actually have a bit of a negative effect on at least like their performance abilities, which doesn't necessarily always correspond to the score. But yeah, it's a big question as to what difference it will make, if any at all. But I do think that it is good for exposure, especially if like there's a question about Spain that I'll get to next. But like Spain is of the pre-qualified songs. Spain is the one that is likely to be the most provocative. So if that's a moment for Spain to kind of like get themselves out there and cause a bit of chatter before they actually get to perform in the final, then that could really work out well for them. But anyway, Vexier is asking thoughts on Spain announcing the 2025 participation before the Benidorm 2024 winner. Well, I mean, Spain's a Big Five country. We expect them to appear every year. And we know as well that for Benidorm Fest that they were contracted to make at least 4 editions of it. So 2025 Benidorm Fest we know is going to happen, and we don't know anything beyond that. So it's not really much of a surprise. But yeah, and we're going to see a few others like before the contest even begins this year. We'll see a few other broadcasters like commit their participation ahead of time. But yeah. Mackinder asking, what are your thoughts on the Albanian revamp? So I never listened to I don't even know if there was a studio version of Zemran Nador. So it was really like my first time hearing it not live. And I mean, you know, it succeeds at what a lot of Albanian revamps succeed at, which is to make it a little bit more international sounding. And of course, it's in English. Yeah, I mean, it didn't really improve my impressions of the song, which are like I kind of I don't know. I go back and forth on it. I definitely don't dislike it, but it's just maybe not the most remarkable with respect to what we're looking at. Um, but you know, like it's professionally done, and I don't think that they've lost anything with the revamp, which sometimes happens. I'm not as won over by the Maltese revamp, and I think that they might have done more than was necessary as far as like changing the hook, changing some of the lyrics. But yeah, it's in the case of Albania, I don't think they have really affected anything. Um, Jose saying it's pretty difficult to predict the winner early this year. I feel like the last 2 years we already had a pretty good idea of who would win. Yes, definitely, or do well after national final season. Yes, and that's the kind of contest that we all hope for. Because who knows? Maybe the discussion will center around 3, 4, 5 songs, and the winner will be a sixth song that nobody was expecting. So, okay, good to know that I got it right, Breton. But the region is Brittany, so I know that much. Switzerland, yes, big excitement for Switzerland. Um, Hello to Trosse. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. My favorite is Norway with 100-year-old Norse text. Yeah, the version that they're taking to Eurovision is actually changed from that, but it's very cool for them to be, you know, using that as source material for their music, and that's been a tradition of theirs ever since they formed as a band in the 90s. So I'm yeah, I really like their approach to music, and they're really excellent at what they do. Raphael saying people are sleeping too much on Portugal. Black Mamba and Maru were underrated and mostly an NQ by the fandom before the semis, and Yolanda will shut up those critics again. Enough of underrating us. I mean, I'm definitely in your corner on that, and yeah, especially with Black Mamba, because I remember seeing in like every poll they were like last, second last, and everybody was like, "Oh, this is just boring." And then by the time we actually saw the rehearsals, it looked like a guaranteed qualifier, and that's the way that I felt when we. You know, before, excuse me, that's the way that I felt before we actually watched that semifinal. So yeah, I don't know if it's going to be like a left-hand side finish. If it gets to the final, like it really should, in my opinion. But I do think that the concerns about not having the juries in the semis are definitely valid. So it's not a reflection of the quality of the song. Giuseppe saying, I also think Switzerland will win, and Italy and France will get many jury points. Yeah, and that pretty much sums up how I feel. It might be another costly Eurovision to go to next year if we go to Switzerland, but yeah. HCB, hello to Harry. This is Harry from Eurovox, in case you didn't know. I have only one wish for the running orders, San Marino Slot 11. I get it. Yeah, because the song's 1111. Yeah. Yeah, and that would be a cute idea to play with. I mean, and it would also help for people trying to, you know, remember which number to vote for when they are putting in their votes. Islak saying, jury top 5 prediction. Okay. So I'm seeing Ukraine, Switzerland, Belgium, Portugal, and did we say that this is France, CP? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and I mean France is definitely going to be in the top 5 in the jury. I'm pretty sure. I guess this is specific to the running order: Cyprus first and Luxembourg last. Definitely possible. Also, kind of like a bookending thing with having up-tempo songs at the beginning and at the end. I hope that they go for something a little bit more adventurous than Luxembourg at the end. Although, like, I would understand if they would do that. Yeah. Okay. Harry saying Poland opening, Luxembourg closing in semifinal 1 and semifinal 2. Austria opening, Estonia closing. Yeah, those are some pretty good choices. Hello to Guga. What do you think about Georgia's entry this year? So earlier I was saying that that was a song that I'd only listened to once before today, and then I decided to listen to it again. I like it. It's not a favorite of mine. And when we're talking about an internally selected song, really you can only say so much until we actually see rehearsals. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's not my style of music. That's the thing. So I don't think I would ever really love a song like that. But the hook is really good. It's come back to me a lot in my mind, and yeah, I'm optimistic about Georgia, kind of at the same level as I was last year, which unfortunately didn't happen. But yeah, I think it's solid. Um, do you think the whole thing that people can vote earlier is a good change? Uh, it's hard to say. I don't think it's a bad change. I can't really see what the negative would be. It would be one thing where, like, when we look at how they've done San Remo some years, where they have the voting opening while the songs are being performed, but then after the last song is performed, the televote sometimes closes very quickly. So that it almost like puts the ending songs at more of a disadvantage because there just isn't as much time to vote for them before people have seen them. So as long as they don't do that, which I don't think they're planning on doing, then I think that it's a good change. Alex saying Estonia closing would be so good. Yeah, I think that would be my number one choice to close semi two. And also kind of considering the timing of when we got the running order last year, I'm pretty sure we're going to be getting it like this coming week. If not then at least by next week. So we will have the answers to all these questions soon. That was Alex's question. So I hope that is enough for what you were looking for. Thomas asking, what country do you think can win the televote? So I do think that Croatia could possibly win the televote. Um, I don't think it's going to be a runaway televote like last year, or certainly like the year before, which was record breaking, of course. Ukraine could do it as well this year. I think like the countries that I would see as most likely to win the televote, it would be Croatia and Ukraine. And let's see if maybe there's a third. Because I know a lot of people would be thinking like Finland or Netherlands, and I'm definitely not. I think that they will do. They're going to get the vast majority of their points from the televote, but I don't think that either of those songs will be as universally appreciated as others do. Um, I would love it if it was Estonia. I think that that also has some issues with not being like to everybody's taste, but I would love it if it was Estonia. Um, and I would also love it if it was Norway. Again, I also think that that is maybe a bit too niche to be universally loved. And then when we're looking at the big five, um, yeah, I don't think that any of maybe yeah, and even with Italy, I don't think it would like win the televote, but I think it would do pretty well with the televote. So, um, in Vino Veritas is saying only the host country should be an automatic qualifier. I mean, in a perfect universe, that would be how it works, but we don't live in a perfect universe, and Eurovision is expensive and hemorrhaging countries practically every year. Um, Pinwiz saying, selfishly, I'm happy to see songs like Spain and France live twice finals week without buying extra tickets. Oh, okay, I see what you mean. So you're going to the semifinals and you're going to be glad to see them live. Yeah, and that'll be good for the people who go to the show as well, because you didn't really get the full experience out of seeing the clips. The only show that I went to as a spectator was 2022 semifinal one, the family show. And as I've said before, I'm a big Mahmood fan, and I would have loved to have seen BVD live, even though like we know that it didn't end up being that great live. But I still would have wanted to see it live because it would have been really lovely, and such a beautiful song. Um, Henry saying, I absolutely love Ireland, and most people I see have it at the base of their rankings. Do you think that this might be one of the most non-political, polarizing songs of recent times? Yeah, I think like there are a lot of questions about how effectively it's going to be performed because we can't really use Eurosong as a baseline because it's nowhere close to what to expect at Eurovision. Of course, with the nature of song that it is, it could be really beautiful. But like we also really haven't seen. It's been a while since we've seen really effective staging from Ireland, so like I'm kind of keeping my expectations tailored. But yeah, the nature of the song is going to be divisive. It's still like even if this is a non-qualifier, it's still much better to go out that way than with a song that a lot of people think. The nicest thing that somebody says about a song is that it's nice. Like you don't want that kind of song to be the one that you don't qualify with. And Hero is asking the same question. And you know, like obviously because I know that Ireland struggles, and I know that the scene in Ireland is looking for a reason to like legitimize Eurovision in the 2020s. It would definitely be great for them to qualify. I do think that it's like, especially now that we're seeing what it's up against, it's seeming less likely than it was before. But it's still a great move on their end and a good example of how to move forward. Walk Walk Fashion Baby, nice name. What do you think about big artists participating as interval acts in ESC? I think it's good. I think that sometimes the name gets like there's a bit too much emphasis put on the name and their presence. And obviously, the biggest example was Madonna in 2019 because like she got there because there was some like oligarch, not an oligarch, but some guy with a lot of money was like, let's have Madonna there. So he financed it, and she didn't perform well. They had spent pretty much the entire show hyping up to Madonna, only for it to be that kind of performance. So yeah, there's definitely a drawback to hyping up a name and then having that be like one of the worst performances when compared to all of these other people who are at a much lower level in for lack of a better term, in their respective music scenes. So if they put on a good show, and if like let's say the production, when they're teasing to it, they don't make it all about that performance, then I'm totally fine with it. And I believe that people have talked about like Zara Larsson. It's been a while since I've seen like what are the updates about who's going to be performing, and or if there have been any updates yet. But in any case, I'm not opposed to it, but it just comes down to if it's good, which is really like it's like what you can tie everything back to. I think if it's good, then sure, why not? William is asking which revamp is best, Czechia, Malta, or Albania. I'm going to go with Czechia because they didn't change too much. They kept the essence of the song and they just fleshed it out a little bit. Fira saying Spanish fans destroyed the whole concept of Benidorm Fest. Now it's a huge mess because they are aggressive to the artists. So we've talked about this, and while it is definitely a unique problem in Spain, the kind of fan hysteria, it's not exclusive to Spain at all. And I think that the perfect example of how it's definitely a much larger issue was the hysteria after Eurovision last year, where both Karia and Loreen were the target of unnecessary vitriol. And people just don't understand that, like, it's okay if your favorite song doesn't win. And like, if a song that you didn't like is still, universally commercially successful and it attracts a lot of excitement about it, like, don't make it all about you. But yeah, it is a bit weird with the Spanish scene and how, like, because we've even seen it with Junior Eurovision too, how they're maybe a little bit too invested. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Vex here asking, what is a country you would like to see go from an internal selection to a national final? When we're talking about, I know a few who should go the other way, but yeah, I'll have to. I'm consulting the list right now. It's really hard to say because there's only so many that I've followed as like as a content creator, where I can compare the two. The first one that comes to mind is Australia, because I did really like Australia Decides. I think that it did have some issues with like making the production at the level of some of the other selections that we see. And I don't think that it was ever like the best from when we're talking about performances, but there was a lot of diversity to what they did, and you know I could always feel the passion through what they did with us. Excuse me, with Australia Decides. So I guess I'll stick with that one. But yeah, I mean, I'm of the opinion that if your internal selection is working for the most part, and you know, by that I mean it doesn't necessarily mean that your song has to qualify every year, but if at least it generates excitement, then stick with it, because why if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Oliver saying about France, I'm not sure. The song was released in November. People might be tired of it already. I think that's specific to, you know, people like us who are following Eurovision from that early. For most people, are going to be hearing the song on for the first time on that night, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Girlboss ESC saying, on the other hand, it would be much funnier if they slotted San Marino's 11-11 spot 11-11 in spot 12 or 10. I don't know if it would be that much funnier, but it would be maybe an example of how they missed the opportunity, or if they're like just kind of teasing at making it close to 11. Juanini saying, I want American Song Contest back and San Marino in the final. So American Song Contest is, if it ever comes back, it will not be in the immediate future, because Christer Bjorkman is working on this show, and I feel like in order for it, because firstly it needs a new home because NBC has dropped it, and I don't see any reason for them to reissue the show again, because they clearly weren't happy with how it went. And yeah, like I one thing that I've wanted to talk about is using American Song Contest as an example for why the Canadian version, which has also been shelved with no signs of life, is like even less likely of happening. And a lot of it has to do with the way that our television works. Because one of the most painful things about American Song Contest was how slow it was. And it's because like all American TV has those short intervals of actual program time broken apart by tons of commercials. And Canadian TV is the exact same way. And it would be very unlikely for any broadcaster to commit to a format where you could even get like, maybe you could get 2 songs in a single block, but you wouldn't get any more than that. And if the songs like are not leaving enough of an impression, then there's just really no desire to invest in it as a viewer from my point of view. So yeah, I mean, it's a shame, but I think that maybe what they just need to do is come up with a song contest that works for the United States. And maybe it doesn't even need to live on broadcast television, which is like kind of a radical idea. But at this point, like we all know that it's digital that drives traffic. And so if they're able to build something around a digital environment, then maybe it would have more of a chance at success and having like a devoted young audience that really wants to follow it. Hello to James. What country do you wish would send more of its native language? So, yeah, I don't really have one. It would be nice to see a song in Swedish. Again, I'm not of the opinion that it has to be, and yeah, like at the end of the day, whatever the language is, as long as it's not the artists underestimating their abilities in that language, then I'm okay with it. But yeah, I think rather than say like which country should send more songs in its native language, what I will say instead is it's always nice to see an underrepresented language make its way on the Eurovision stage. And I'm looking at the list for Semi 2 right now, and I'm seeing Australia. I cannot for the life of me remember what the name of that language is, the indigenous language, but like it's such a great opportunity, because there are a lot of languages that are going extinct. And, you know, even here in Canada, the indigenous languages that we have from coast to coast, some of them are only spoken by a handful of hundreds or thousands. So anytime that there's a moment to recognize a culture that is kind of under threat, and for lack of a better term, of well, yeah, anytime that you can have a moment like that, I think that's pretty incredible. Hello, Alex. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you two recommended you. My faves are Estonia and Croatia. Do you think that Estonia will qualify? Without a doubt. And if yes, will they do good with the televote? I think stronger with the televote than the jury. And I think that this is one of those examples. Like it's kind of like Serbia 2022, where it's not as if the music isn't creative and it has like it's not as if like the melody is really basic or anything. There's a lot to appreciate about it musically, but I guess because it's not the most accessible, it might not be appreciated as much by the juries. And then when we're talking about the televote, I think that people might respond to it more because it's kind of wacky rather than for the actual song that it is, which is fine because whatever, it still works in their favor. But I'm still that of the crazy party songs this year, that's my favorite by far. Oliver saying, I hope Germany won't finish last this year. I think that I did say this last year, but I think that this year they will probably not finish last. Probably not. Benedict saying, I've seen some people say that the host country should always open the final. Do you agree? Not really, because we all know that performing early means that you're less likely to get big televote numbers, even though they're now having the voting open in. Sorry, even though they're now having the voting open from the first song going forward, it's still a recency bias thing. So I don't think that's necessarily the best idea. I think that countries, if they have a good song a second time around, they should have the opportunity to win again. We haven't seen it in a long time, but I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I understand the thinking though, maybe. Hello to Chloe. To be honest, in a super open Eurovision year without a clear winner, I can see Ukraine winning the televote. Fun songs can cancel each other out, and Ukraine could also be top 4 with a jury. Very possible. I have to agree with that. The problem with Ireland is that they're in the most difficult semi and the most difficult half. Literally, all 7 could qualify, and half of them will NQ because it's impossible all to be qualifiers. Yeah, I mean, we're going to lose good songs this year. I mean, it happens every year, but although when it comes to the songs that I'm most excited about and listening to outside of watching all this and doing YouTube coverage, I'm still happy to see songs that are not necessarily to my taste, but are still daring and not safe, and that to me is just this is the kind of year that you want, in my opinion, when we're talking about that aspect, because there's definitely other things that we are not so happy about. I discovered Onuka or Darren in the interval acts. It was really good. 1994 Riverdance became iconic. Yeah, I'm always a big fan of seeing those interval acts that really kind of stop you in your tracks, even if they're sometimes better than the songs that we see. At the same, Harry's saying, I feel like they'll be at the same feeling of Vitriol this year, with how many songs are well liked and what's going on in the world currently, potentially even more. Yeah, and I mean that. Look, that's a factor that no one really has any control over. I might as well address this because obviously Israel's participation has been a big part of the discussion. To a lesser degree, Azerbaijan's participation has been part of the discussion, and it's important to recognize that those issues are way bigger and way more important than Eurovision itself. Obviously, because they're both included, it has brought the conflicts much closer than is comfortable for the vast majority of people. But I think that for the people here watching this video, there's a few things that I would like to impart on you. Firstly, do your best to not get caught in these arguments with faceless people who don't care anything about listening to what you have to say. And they don't really care if you're trying to change your mind or anything. And I think everybody would be a little bit better off if they, when talking about these political matters, if they spoke more to people that you know, and that, like, I don't think it's happening enough. I've been making an effort to talk to people that I know who follow Eurovision and get a sense of where they are with their understanding of the conflicts and how they feel about them. And, you know, like, obviously there is a variety of opinions. I'm doing my best to respect everybody's position on this. The position that I've taken, which some people know, is that I won't be covering the entries for Israel or Azerbaijan. And that's a position that I'm going to be taking indefinitely. That will be recognized in a separate video along with the statements. And then I won't really say much more about that. But yeah, like, it's important to remember that these issues are so big. They're affecting so many institutions. A lot of these institutions are, you know, experiencing an existential crisis. So it's very hard. Well, it's heartbreaking, but it's part of where we are in the world. And the best thing that we can do is, you know, express as much respect as we can to people who feel differently about these issues. Oliver saying a national final for the UK would be great to follow. Yeah, I don't think they're there yet. I think that with Ollie and Dizzy, I think that it has potential to be like a decent finish. I think they made a mistake by teasing it as a winner. Like, you really don't ever have to do that, because you're almost like guaranteed to set people up for disappointment. But I don't think they're quite ready to do a national final yet. I would be happy to see it if eventually, like, if they're getting an entire lineup of songs with songs by artists at Ollie's level, then sure, but that probably wouldn't happen. Hello to Jim. When artists only release music videos or edited tracks, I always find myself disappointed with the live performance. They rarely live up to the music video live. I often rule these songs out now. I mean, yeah, if you're comparing something that's been done in the studio and edited to a T to be as good as possible, it's never going to be, it's rarely going to be at that level. But, you know, every now and then somebody lives up to the expectations, or like, you know, even if it's not necessarily pitch perfect, like if their vocals aren't pitch perfect like they are in the actual studio track, there's still something compelling about their presence, or the, you know, the kind of detailing in their voice that's different to how the song sounds in the studio track. So yeah, I mean, it's always going to be the case. No one sounds exactly as they do on the studio version. This is an interesting question. What ingredients do you think are essential to create the perfect winning song? I don't think there are any. I think that there are things that help. And I mean, yeah, it's like there are very general things that help, but they're not necessarily essential. Like, I really think authenticity is a big part of that. Making sure that whatever the message is in the song, that there is a genuine connection to it. But there are plenty of songs that didn't necessarily have that, especially when we're talking about like older Eurovisions. One thing that I found was so interesting was how many artists who performed for the UK specifically, who later said that they hated their songs, you know? So, I mean, it's not necessary. There are a lot of people who are just really good at faking it, but it helps. Like, if you can kind of feel that passion that people have, it helps to make it more appealing. Apart from that, you can't underestimate staging. You know, staging is a tricky thing to really get right, because every song demands something different and every artist performs in their own unique way. And there are often a lot of mistakes made when neither of those things are considered. And you could use examples of like Lazara last year, who, you know, she's spoken out about how she didn't feel like she was really well treated by her delegation. And one of the things that she had said was that she was scared of heights, and, you know, performing up on a big pedestal. And so it's not, you know, with that in mind, it's pretty easy to understand why maybe performing was a lot more of a challenge for her, because she wasn't comfortable. Even this example comes up a lot, and I think people are often quite negative about Leslie Roy from Ireland 2021. And like, when you watch that performance, she was clearly overwhelmed. but I still admired the effort. I thought that it was a great idea, and I was much happier with seeing that come from Ireland than I have been about pretty much everything else that we've seen in the last few years. But it also, it undersold what the message of the song was, because the song was about taking control of your own destiny, and here, she was kind of not in control when it comes to the staging itself. So yeah, that would be one thing. And I don't know, I could probably talk a lot more about this, but like, yeah, there's no perfect recipe. There are a lot of things that help, but yeah, that's probably all I can say. Um, Jose saying, I would love to see Germany send a song in German again. I know the stereotype is that it sounds harsh and consonant heavy, but I think it can sound really melodic, like Ein bisschen Frieden. Yeah, absolutely, and it's yeah, that would be, it would be a nice change of pace for sure to see something in German that wasn't like, let's say, what was that guy's name from last year? Ike. Yeah, no, I agree. James saying, which country do you think should make an ESC debut? I think the only two continental countries that we haven't seen yet are Liechtenstein, Liechtenstein, and Vatican City. We're not seeing Vatican City ever. Um, and then I'm always like skeptical, not skeptical. I'm reluctant to include some other countries that are outside of Europe, because obviously that always gets certain people riled up. Um, yeah, I don't know. I would love to see certain countries come back that have been missing for a while. It does look like we will get Monaco back, because they've established their broadcaster as of September last year, and uh, by the sounds of it, I think they were saying that there's some money allocated for Eurovision, but don't quote me on that because I might be getting that confused with someone else. Um, Fira saying, people forget that in 2022, all slower songs qualified in the televote. Armenia, Portugal, Netherlands, Greece, Lithuania, and Iceland, and the funny joke song "Eat Your Salad" was an NQ in the televote. Yeah, I mean, it's true to say that it's not as if ballads are completely disregarded by the televote. There were a lot of them that year, so I think that just by the matter of the sheer volume, we were going to get some of them anyway. And like 2022 is one of my favorite lineups for music, which is like, I don't see a lot of people saying that. Yeah, very good quality ballads. Portugal, one of my favorites. Netherlands was great. Greece was great. Lithuania, I really loved. Iceland's, yeah, all the ones that you listed. Those are like great songs that I would listen to on any day. And also, it's fair to say that not all joke songs land well. So in that case, Eat Your Salad did not land as well as people were expecting, and that's just what happens sometimes. Hello to Adil. Big Mahmood fan here. Have you listened to his new album? Not yet. It's on the list. His Sanremo song "Tuta Gold" got me interested again in his music after a year and a half break. Yeah, and I actually I have listened to his second album, but that was another one that I was going to listen to again because I wasn't paying full attention to it. But yeah, like huge Mahmood fan. He can come back to Sanremo as many times as he wants, and I will not be mad about it. Bubble Pirate saying, do you think Ireland need another staging concept? As far as like, I don't think they'll take what we saw at Eurosong, and if they did, then yeah, you could pretty much consider them dead on arrival. But yeah, they just need to play up into the occult imagery that Bambi Thug has been teasing. Yeah, to do that, to play with the lights, give us some shadows. Yeah, it could be really, it could look really good. It still might not necessarily guarantee them a qualification, but yeah, they're starting on the right foot. All this to say that Finland can be a shock NQ because people are not dumb, and the majority like fun entries but not joke entries. I don't. I don't think it's going to fail to qualify. I think that we are going to be getting Finland. It's not my cup of tea. It's very much not my cup of tea. But there is still like an audience for Eurovision craziness, and in that semifinal, for example, we don't really have. Just taking a look at it, Yeah, that's the crazy song from from semifinal one. So I think that it will still pull in a decent amount of support. I am noticing now that they're short on neighbors because really they only have Iceland as far as the Nordic / Scandinavian bloc goes. But yeah, I think we're going to be having them in there. Harry, thank you very much. Who do you think might be the biggest shock contender for the win this year? Shock contender for the win. I would love to think that it would be Lithuania. I don't think it will be, but I would love to think that it would be Lithuania. Let's see. We'll go back to the odds. Yeah, shock. It's so hard to say. Yeah, as I go further down the list, because I'm at like 17, 18, 19, and I'm like, no. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Lithuania. Um, you might have noticed that Lithuania is one of my favorite songs this year, so there's definitely some bias on that end. But putting that aside, I think that everything that they have as far as the performance and the song, it's doing everything that it needs to be doing. So I'm very happy about that. Is there any song you really want to qualify but you think that it won't? So we've already talked a little bit about Portugal and how I have some concerns, even though I'm more optimistic than I am pessimistic about it. Slovenia, we haven't really talked much about Slovenia, and that would be one that maybe could miss out. I think that one will be visually appealing, and maybe that would kind of pose a threat to Ireland, not because of the nature of the song, because they have nothing in common, but because of how there's this kind of, well, I mean, there is a witch aspect to it, because the song, if I have got this down correctly, the name Veronica is the name of someone who was burned as a witch, or like executed for being accused of being a witch. And sorry, not burned. I actually think that she was drowned, which is obviously very tragic, but something that happens in our history. But what else? Yeah, those would be the two that I'm most concerned about from semi one, and then from semi two. Oh, sorry. I think there is a bit of a glitch on my end. Yeah, I don't really think there is one in semi two that I'm concerned about not qualifying. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. It's Portugal and Slovenia in semi one. Hello to Tomislav. Nice to see you. A Croat living in Germany. Hi to Lori. Thank you very much. Respectfully engaging with someone who has a different opinion is also important. I also hope that people will treat the artists from Israel and Azerbaijan with respect, as do I, because as much as I might be, for lack of a better term, boycotting those songs, because I haven't actually heard them, and for me, even though I know that it's not necessarily necessary for me to be avoiding them, it's just as far as I'm concerned, it's. Oh, am I breaking up? Sorry. I might have been breaking up on my end, so I'll go back to what I was saying. I am, for lack of a better term, boycotting Israel and Azerbaijan's songs, but you're not going to find me harassing the artists. You're not going to find me, just being inappropriate. And while you also can't discredit the fact that they agreed to go to Eurovision under these circumstances. So, they need to prepare for some, I don't want to say nastiness, because no one deserves nastiness, but for tough questions, they absolutely need to be prepared. And I might have tough questions for them if I, let's say, if I'm able to ask them in a semifinal, like a semifinal qualification press conference, but they will still be respectful and they'll still be within the context of the contest. But yes, it should go without saying. Alex Dim saying, I hope that we see Mikael Gabriel and nublu in ESC one day. Personally, they were my favorite this year by far. Vox Populi. I'm so glad that I discovered them. I honestly felt like they had a better chance at winning than both Windows 95 Men and Sara Sipola. But that's just how it goes. It was interesting. After talking to a few people about what they were trying to say in the song, I think that they might not have worded their opinion very well, but yeah, in the future, it would be cool to see something of that character with maybe just like, I don't know, a different sound, because I wasn't 100% sold on the sound. Hello to Fernanda. It's been a while. Happy to see you around. Please carry on. Just wanted to, oh, how nice. Groot saying Canada for ESC 2025. I mean, if we get the invitation, we should take it. I might have said this in the last live that I did, but the one of the higher ups at CBC doesn't quite understand how Eurovision works, and they were worried about us entering and winning and having to host, which would probably not happen. Funny enough, tonight is actually the Junos, which is like our Grammys for Canada, and I was thinking about trying to watch them because it's been a while since I've actually watched the show. And you know, like it would be great to be a way to feature Canadian talent, especially without having to go through the American system, because the vast majority of Canadian artists that people know, which are there are a lot of famous Canadian musicians, it's been because they went through the United States to boost their careers. So to not have to do that, I think Eurovision would be a great option for our scene, but it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Danilo saying Slovakia might return soon. Yes. Well, I hope so. I haven't heard any development on that end, but yeah, I mean, if it happens, then you know it's been a long time since they've made their last appearance. And asking, as a Canadian, where do you watch the live show? So it's not geo-blocked here. It was between 2016 and 2019, and you still, in order to watch the performances from that year, you have to use a VPN. But ever since 2021, you've been able to watch it on YouTube. So unless something has changed, then you should be able to watch it here. And the best part about that is that there's no commentary, so you can make your own thoughts about how things go. Oliver also saying Canada should get an invitation like Australia. Shock NQ. It really depends on what what's looking like likely cues. The other day we were talking about Serbia and how Serbia might be a little bit too subtle, but I kind of changed my thinking on that because all of the ex-Yugoslav countries that are still participating are in semi-1, so they're definitely going to be getting some support. Maybe not like 12s, but they'll get some support from Croatia and Slovenia. But yeah, I can't really think of one from semi-1 and semi-2. Shock NQ. Maybe Austria, just because, like, I like Austria's song. I think that it definitely has appeal as far as like, you know, fitting the sound right now. A lot of songs that are you know, tapping into 90s and 2000s dance music. But yeah, it's just a matter of like we have to see it live, and it's not like, of the songs that are really giving us that kind of nostalgia, it's not necessarily the heaviest hitter in my opinion. So maybe that would be one that could not qualify. What else? Oliver's saying, I'm glad that there are less joke songs. Yes, I mean, especially when we're looking at the end of the televote era. I want to say something because I've seen a few people kind of come at me for a video that I did about shifting the needle on the televote, and a lot of people kind of point out the fact that the examples that I used were not necessarily songs that did well to kind of say like, oh, this is what the televote era was. It's not about the songs, the like quote unquote bad songs or the joke songs doing super well. It's about the overall selection. And I think that some people disagree, but a lot of the people that I know, especially the ones that are music fans, when we're talking about the overall selection of songs in the 2000s, it's generally seen as significantly weaker than just about every other decade. Maybe like the 80s is also not great either, but yeah. It's it's definitely better that we have songs that actually feel like songs that people would listen to nowadays. Yeah, I don't know if there's much else that I can say about qualifiers. I know that a lot of you are asking about them, but let's go to that Dolly saying what countries should keep their national selection and will eventually achieve the victory in the next few years. I would say Ukraine. I want to. I want to say that Portugal could also pull in another win sometime soon. They would probably need something. I mean, it would have to kind of fit the Portuguese mindset, and like I don't think they're ever going to get quite as big. Maybe not never, but I'm not expecting a recent win or a win that's soon to come that's as big as Salvador Sobral. But I think that it could happen for them. It could happen for Finland as well, I think. What else? Yeah, yeah. Those are the ones that I'll stick with. I think those are the ones that if they stick to what they're doing, and I mean if we're including Italy in there, which again it's not a real national selection, but it still counts because it functions in a similar way. Just spilled some. Excuse me, 1 second. Spilled some tea on me. Hello to Carla. Nice to see you. Vincent saying, "Oh my God, don't tell me that Slovenia may not qualify." Again, I think it just comes down to the quality of the show. I would consider Slovenia more likely than Ireland, to be honest, because I think Slovenia's is a bit. I don't know. It's a bit easier to. It's more accessible to put it that way. Teak 89. As soon as people realize that No Rules is a parody of Eurodance and a good one at that, their life will be much better. I don't think that's going to be the first thing that calls their attention. I think the first thing that calls their attention is going to be that there's a man with no pants. And that might not necessarily be to everyone's liking, but it's attention grabbing, that's for sure. Host the chat saying, was the American Song Contest doomed to fail from the start, or did it fail due to bad luck or bad decisions? I think that there were a lot of challenges for it, again, because of how American TV works, because of how saturated the American market is with talent shows. And the biggest challenge that they had from the get-go was distinguishing it from American Idol, X Factor, America's Got Talent. And one of the worst ways to do that was to choose American Idol's most well-known winner as the host, which is Kelly Clarkson. She's great. I think that as a host she was good, but it aligned American Song Contest with Idol, the Idol brand. So I don't think it was the smartest, because I think a lot of people just thought of it as another talent show. So there's a lot to be said about American Song Contest, and I hope to do that in a video. But right now the priority is Eurovision 2024. And Bubble Pirate saying, I'd like to see the winner of America's Song Contest participate for us at Eurovision. I don't know if that would go over very well, because which is fine. If it were to ever happen, if there were an American broadcaster that ever got the invitation, then I would say that they should take it and just see how it goes. But especially when we talk about the United States, people are people say a lot what they like about Eurovision is that it feels so different to American music. And it's not necessarily a fair thing to say, because if it's a good song, if it's characteristic of American music that we don't always see, if it's not necessarily the biggest example of an American pop tune, but something that's a little bit more local and regional, then it should definitely have its place on an international stage. But I mean, I don't know if it would be warmly received. And even when the Canadian Eurovision Canada is I think what they call it, when they made that announcement, it looked like, because of the headline, it looked like Canada was joining Eurovision, and there were a lot of people who did not like that. So I feel like if there were a similar announcement to be made about the United States having its moments at Eurovision, I would expect it to be even worse, which is unfortunate. You are definitely not the only one who likes Estonia. I'm a big fan of Estonia. Janik is asking, do you think it's possible to bring back jury voting in the semifinals? What's your opinion about 100% televoting semis? So because we've only seen one example of it, it's hard to say what the long-term impact is going to be. I'm reluctant to say whether or not it's changed how songs get selected for like either national selections or internal selections. But one of the things that was said when they made that announcement in late 2022 was that one of the effects of that could be that the songs that do best with the jury would collect more points in the final than the songs that made it through the semifinal. Or sorry, let me reword that. The effect that they were expecting was that the jury votes would collect more to the top, and that's exactly what happened. But it was also a big part of that was because Lorene's a unique performer. She had a powerhouse of a song that is still very successful to this day. So I mean, maybe we could see that happen again, and then in that case, maybe it's a good argument to go back to 50-50 jury televote. Excuse me. I definitely prefer 50-50 just because I think that it's important for people to be able to sing their songs and for it to be appreciated. I think we still have to see how it's going to go. They might end up going back to it just depending on how it affects the larger final in the future. As you can see, I'm kind of losing my words, and I've been on for almost an hour and a half. So I'll answer a few more questions, and we'll call it a day. Okay, I'll answer this one. As a Canadian, I do respect your decision regarding Israel, but I think not reacting to Edin Golan is giving support to bullying and terror, don't you think? I do not agree with that. Nothing that I've ever done or said supports that. And I think that everybody should be within their right to decide what content they make. And one thing that is important to stress for me is that I'm not a big outlet like Wee Blogs or Eurovoix or like ESC Today, ESC Extra that do these like full scale coverage of Eurovision. I have to be selective because of the kind of content that I do, I can't get everybody at the same level. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but the decision that I'm making is a matter of principles, and it's because I disagree with this idea that every political issue should be put to the side so that countries should have the privilege of participating in Eurovision, because there are some differences that are far too big to be put to the side, and this is like one of the most serious things that's ever happened in the history of Eurovision. So I cannot in good faith pretend like that's not important. So that's why I'm not covering those entries. Again, I don't support any kind of bullying. I definitely don't support any kind of terror. But I mean, that's also kind of on the Israeli delegation for insisting on participating. And also, like, we have to mention that they were not going to change the lyrics of the song until the president of Israel had intervened and insisted that they make those adaptations so that they could have their presence here. And it's like, yeah, there's nothing political about that, is there? Right? Like, yeah. Anyway, look, I know that this is going to be hard on everyone, but this is the hand that we've been dealt, and this is how I've chosen to play my hand. Anyway, I want to end on a more positive note, so I'll try and pull up a few more. Centrifuga. There is a high probability that Ukraine will win because Europe is full of Ukrainians and they like their song this year. Ukraine has a good song this year, so I would have no problem with them winning. Ukraine also had a great winning song. I know that a lot of people focus on the fact that that was the year that the full-scale invasion of Ukraine happened. And it's hard to not consider that as being a factor in the vote. It definitely was, but at the end of the day, they had a great song, and you'll never find me complaining about a song like that winning Eurovision. I think, kind of similar to what we were talking about just before this, one thing that has really defined Eurovision of the 2020s is that it is impossible to make a show nowadays that is completely disconnected from the world. So I think we just have to accept that, if we want to have this multinational competition where countries are represented, under their flags, that it's going to mean that there will be external factors that affect the voting. And, let's also not forget the priority here is that Ukraine wins this war and that, the fighting can stop. Eurovision Faith saying, it's just the issue. Juries don't judge songs objectively. We've done 3 videos on this, so I hope that you check those out. Many put mid songs with mid staging high just because the singer has a good voice, even though vocal capacity is only 25% of scoring. So mid is obviously subjective. There are many songs that I really like that others will describe as mid. Yeah, like the whole idea of objectivity in music is like, it is a matter of debate, because there are certainly, like, when we're talking about technique or complexity, you can definitely make an argument for what is objectively more challenging to sing or objectively more of a complex song. Those things are not always appreciated, but that goes both ways. That they're not always appreciated by the jury. They're also not always appreciated by the televote. And it's also very easy to look at someone's scoring in isolation, the rank of a juror, and like be like, oh yeah, that's a bad ranking because I think this song should do better. And one of the things that I hope people remember is that as a juror, you have to rank all the songs from top to bottom, and your liking of it is not necessarily reflected in that, because you could love all the songs, you could also hate all the songs, but it has the exact same effect. So keep that in mind. Thomas saying, actually, I agree with you that Ukraine, Portugal, and Finland should keep their national finals, but I will add to that list Lithuania. Yeah, that's a good choice. I think that Lithuania is as an overall, like when we're talking about the overall song quality, it's not quite at the same level, but I've been very happy with everything that they've been putting out since like 2020. Yeah, I think that theirs is definitely a good one, and as long as they're getting like the Sylvester Belts, the Monica Lius, the Monica Linkatiers, and the Roop, and as long as they're getting those kinds of songs coming out on top, then yeah, they can absolutely keep doing what they're doing. All right, this is going to be the last one. Which song do you think is the most oh, why did this have to be the last one? Which song do you think is the most overrated and which is the most underrated this year? So again, matter of preference, matter of opinion. But because you've asked the question, one of the songs that's definitely clicking with a lot of people that is not clicking with me is The Netherlands. And I say this as someone who listens, or who has listened to and enjoyed songs from that are in like the genre happy hardcore and gabber. It is like just not anywhere close to those kind of songs that I like. I find it to be really monotonous. I know that they're going to ham up the performance with some craziness, and it's just really, really not for me. I do think that it's probably going to qualify regardless. So don't take my dislike of the song as any kind of reflection on how it's going to be received. But and like I know as well that he's written the song in dedication to his parents who have both passed away, and you have that kind of like the softer ending where you realize, oh, okay, there's a bit of heart to it too. So it's not a one-dimensional song by any means, but I think that if they go about the performance in the over-the-top Eurovision crazy party way, then it could be definitely read as one-dimensional, and at least when we're talking about the final, could be completely dismissed by the juries. And the same applies for Finland as well, which is probably even more one-dimensional in some ways. Not completely, but quite a bit. that wasn't necessarily the the note that I wanted to end on. But you said most underrated as well, so that's a way for me to be a little bit more positive. Most underrated, maybe Moldova. Let me. I don't want to spend too long on this, but most underrated song. I mean, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about Armenia, which is not like a heavy hitter or anything. It's just a lot of fun. I think that it could have the kind of the Moldova 2022 effect of being going all out on traditional sounds and just being fun and energetic and really getting people invested in it. It's a bit repetitive, but that would be probably my idea for one that I think is an underrated song. But in any case, I am going to end it there because this was longer than I was expecting to chat. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed chatting with me and sharing your thoughts. If you haven't done so already, I would love if you subscribe to the channel. I also have a Buy Me a Coffee link, which is down in the description. If you can, spare some change to put it in that terms. If you can support me that way, then I am very grateful. I don't expect it because obviously, these are tough times and you should spend your money wisely. But any way that you can support me, I'm very grateful for, whether it's a like or a comment or a subscription. And I hope that you come back so that we can do some more live chats. There will be more videos on the way. I'm working on them as we speak. And I look forward to putting those out to you. So thank you once again, and I'll see you next time. Bye.